So I like to give a background and so that people know how safe homeschooling is, because there's a lot of questions about legality. It's legal in all 50 states. Nationwide, homeschoolers make up about 4% of school-age children, and it's growing. And I would say that the next couple weeks, it's probably close to 100% in some states. We're very diverse ethnically, politically, socioeconomically. And then we have, let's see, there's about 28 states and counting that have laws that allow homeschoolers to participate in interscholastic sports, whether through PSP or the school district. And on average, and this is because some states don't necessarily have to do reporting for homeschool. For example, Idaho, you don't really have to do anything. It's about 10 to 15% growth annually. So, and the laws vary by state. It's very state specific. So, see if there's anybody else. Okay, so you can kind of see how it's grown, and you see here California has the most homeschoolers per capita of any state in the union. We have about 12% of all homeschoolers nationwide. So greetings from California. One thing to remember, homeschooling is not compulsory, or actually school is not compulsory until age 6. So if you're on the fence about homeschooling for next year, if you have younger kids, you don't have to make that decision until your child is 6 years old. In 2018, there were about 200,000 homeschoolers, up from 193,000 in 2017. And California is unique in that since about 2015, 2016, we have seen a growth rate double the national average, about 30% per year annually. And that's for a lot of reasons. The most popular way, I would say, that the homeschool in California is through a charter homeschool or an independent study program, ISP. And then I usually go through you know, the 3 legal ways of homeschooling. But this is just sort of like a diversity. You know, there are a lot of marginalized groups that are homeschool. And
hey,
people,
Andi,
yes.
can I just interrupt you for a minute? Can you please mute everybody and then unmute yourself so we don't have that background noise?
Sure. Let's see.
Under manage participants, you should be able to mute all.
Okay, here we go. Manage participants. Mute. All right, can everyone hear me? Okay, I hope everyone can hear me. So awesome. All right. Sharing again. Let's see. So I mentioned the diversity. Kind of a background for me. I am a homeschooler. My daughter is considered 2E. She has dyslexia and then some sensory issues. She, in a normal school, would be a special ed student. And yes, we do get her evaluated through our homeschool charter. One of the main reasons I like homeschooling is because I can meet her where she is, and I can teach and reach her the best way that she learns. Not only that, but if she were in regular school, it's one size fits all. I don't have to deal with her being pulled out of school in order to receive services if I wanted to. So there are plenty of online resources to empower students and parents. I think that a lot of people, especially now when they're finding out that they are reluctant homeschoolers, are finding that there are so many resources. I know that my home school district, Huntington Beach City School District, they're still trying to figure out how to get students work and how to do things virtually. They're a little bit behind the curve. And it's been a source of contention locally in some of the groups. And I'm directing people to find sources online. You can homeschool with $0. You don't have to use a set curriculum. There are so many different types of programs, free curricula. A lot of curriculum right now are, if you search, they are giving free lockdown or, you know, quarantine sort of tastes of what their curriculum is like, and you can download it for free. So myself as a homeschooler, I've been taking advantage of that because I kind of collect curriculum. It's probably a problem of mine, but it's a great way to kind of mix it up and see. We like to mix it up from year to year. Sometimes we go back to our old favorites, but We like to know what's out there. So I used to work for Homeschool Charter. I'm a filmmaker turned homeschool mom, and then I got my teaching credential. I worked briefly for a charter. A lot of students say that they left because they were escaping bullying, racism, peer pressure, things like that. The school just wasn't necessarily meeting them where they were, or their kids were not being stimulated enough. I'm in contact with friends that are road schooling, world schooling, and especially during this time, a lot of game schooling. And of course, we're all on lockdown, so we're not doing theme park schooling. So, but you can do that. So, some of the benefits, and I'm sure some of the other guests can also attest to that. And oh, you know what? Actually, I think that we have our guest. And let me get Stefanie. Stefanie?
I'm here.
Hi. Do you want to introduce the Gallaghers?
Yeah, now my camera's working, I think. I don't know. And Jenna.
Hi.
How's it going?
Good. How are you guys doing?
We're doing good. Hanging in there like everybody else.
Enjoying working from home?
Yes. And no.
My husband took over my office, so.
So for everybody on the call, this is Jenna and James Gallagher, and James is an assembly member with the California State Legislature, and I won't give away all their secrets, but they have 5 kids and they homeschool. So I'll let you guys take it away.
Well, okay. So thank you guys for letting us join you. And, I know, during this time, it's interesting times that we're living in, and it's been rough on everybody with interruptions to, our daily lives and our work and schooling and all of those things. But we just, we want to encourage everybody that this is something that you can do. Homeschooling is something that you can do, even if you feel overwhelmed, at times, especially for those out there maybe who have never done it. So my wife and I, Jenna, maybe kind of move this a little bit so we can see both of us here. So we started homeschooling about 7 years ago when our oldest was in first grade. And so we did that for about 6 years, and actually our oldest 2 were in a charter school this year, and that has now been canceled, so they're back home. And but we continue to homeschool our son, and then we have toddlers that are almost 3 years old, so that makes it a little bit more interesting. But I mean, I think the thing to keep in mind is that there's many things that we can do just teaching at home. I mean, I think there's a lot of good ideas that I've heard as I've been watching other people share what they're doing. Having your schedule in place, having like a set curriculum out there, those as guidelines. We kind of do our best to just keep people on track. Although with 5 of them, sometimes it's difficult. Don't be overwhelmed by that. I mean, that's just life. That's how it normally is there's going to be some craziness. I think we also try to take time to, talk about what's going on and why this is happening, explaining that to the kids. We just recently did that and sat them down so that they would understand, what's going on in the world, why we're doing this. Taking as a time to really work on, I think, character building and education about government and how it works, and talking about the different parts of this, how this is affecting businesses, how we can be available to still help others even if you're at home right now. There's a way to check in on people who are more vulnerable by calling or texting. Being there this is also a great opportunity where neighborhoods are, I think, getting closer to each other. That's a good thing. I've seen people even talking about, hey, maybe doing just some home projects with the kids, so they're learning how to do some of those things. Maybe a little construction project, you're building something, you're teaching your kid as you do it. gardening. I've seen a lot of people do gardens. I think those are also really cool ways to continue to teach in a non-traditional way, but you're still teaching. So those are just a few things I would say. And maybe Jenna here she's probably more of the expert than me, but maybe she can talk about a few things. I got one of my toddlers right here. He's having a good time. So
Cutie pie.
Jenna, go ahead.
I would say for all of the newer homeschool parents out there, just try to take it a little bit at a time and focus on like English language arts and math. Read aloud with your kids. Just really enjoy the time and maybe find some things that that each of your kids are interested in doing, whether it's art or baking or spending some time building with Legos. Just finding some things that they enjoy doing and incorporating that into their schoolwork time too. So
I think all those are really great points, and we've been incorporating that. We are homeschoolers, and we've been homeschooling from the beginning.
awesome.
And but it's a lot more together time, and my husband's working from home, so he's taken over the home office, and it's that delicate balance of where we are in the house, because we are inside, and we are sort of also very nature-based homeschoolers, so that's definitely a shift. But to add to what you were talking about, a lot of family games. I think that this is a great opportunity. We have to look at things as opportunities and just have gratitude for this time, even though there's a lot of uncertainty and things are unclear. But it's also a great time to play the games with the kids and come together as a family. And I love the idea that you had mentioned about reading aloud. And I know that if you have the Hoopla app, you can plug in your library and you can actually listen to audiobooks, and you can listen to them, somebody else even acting them out and reading them also. So, those are a lot of great points. So how long is the assemblyman out of the legislature? I know that they're going to come back, right, this year?
Yeah, I believe it's 3 weeks that you guys are off, right? That you have adjourned.
Yeah, we've adjourned our legislative session.
Yeah, for 3 weeks.
We're obviously still back in the district. My district offices are still open for people to answer questions. All that has remained as normal. We might have a more skeleton crew because people are telecommuting, but we're trying to keep all of our things going, just the same as they were before, and be responsive, give people updates, and that's the reality of what we're in right now. But obviously we want to continue to help let people know that, look, we can get through this together. There's some really helpful hints, especially on homeschooling, I love that you guys are doing this, because I know there's a lot of parents out there who go, man, I don't know how to do this, I can't do this. You can.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of help and resources out there. And so I appreciate you guys, really putting this out there and helping people. And certainly we will continue to help in our ways as well.
Great.
And Connor says hi.
Hi, Connor. Hi, cutie pie.
Thank you so much, James and Jenna, for popping on. I know that you've got family to tend to, but I really appreciate the time. And hopefully we'll kind of keep this going over the next several weeks. So I'll reach out maybe and see if you want to pop back on and share.
Sure, no problem.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And again, thank you for the encouragement, because I know there are a lot of families out there that are not necessarily homeschooling. Maybe they're homeschool curious, or maybe they are looking at this as a viable option and they didn't think about it before people had to stay home. But just, your encouragement, I think, and your words of wisdom can help a lot of people as well, especially through this time. So,
and don't worry about being perfect. I mean, there's nobody that's perfect at doing these things.
That's true. Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect is the enemy of good.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of great helpful hints, and you can do it.
Yeah. Awesome, you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Take
Thank
care.
you. Okay.
We're doing piano lessons right
Yes.
now. Do that as well.
It's a natural. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again and, just kind of riff off of what the Assemblyman was talking about and see if we can give some options and, give everyone a chance to speak. So there are a lot of benefits of homeschooling. What we were talking about, for example, families coming together, families doing projects together, reading aloud together, whatever it may be. But I like to think of this as educating the heart as well as the mind. And I know that this is kind of really uncertain time. And even my 5-year-old, he was telling me, Mommy, I'm kind of afraid. And we try to not overload him with information, but it's coming from so many different places. Even our neighbors are talking about, viruses and things like that. So this week for us has been about kind of cultivating the heart and meeting their needs, whatever their emotional needs are. For us, it has become a lifestyle. You're able to meet students where they are and tailor learning to the individual child. The world is your classroom, maybe not this week, but normally, yes, the world can be your classroom. And it really gives students a way to pursue interests and passions at any age. My 8-year-old last month told me she wanted to start a doll making business. So she's probably going to try to work on that during this time at home. And it really takes the pressure out of learning because it becomes very organic. So some takeaways for those of you who are just starting, and then if anyone else wants to jump in and add anything, these are just what I put together when I was a new homeschooler, very uncertain. Again, educating the heart and the mind. Take time to deschool. You are not required to mimic school at home. You can make it what you want to make it, whether you're, however that is, learning at home. You're using a curriculum, you're playing games together, you are writing stories together, putting plays at home together, even watching documentaries. You're not required to mimic school at home. As a parent, it's always great to kind of put yourself in that situation where you are embracing your inner student. And once you remember how to wake up that curiosity within yourself, it comes naturally to extend it to your family as well. Students also like to have a stake in their own education. Ask your student, what do you want to learn? How do you want to learn it? And this is a marathon, not a sprint. And as the Assembly member said, perfect is the enemy of good. So I should probably add that. I'm going to go through this very quickly. There are 3 legal ways to homeschool in California. And actually, the most popular way is the public charter homeschool, but you can also file a PSA, which is called a private school affidavit, or sign up with a private school satellite program. And I will go through very quickly. So just to kind of give you an idea about what a PSA is. Number 1 to remember is it is the least restrictive way to homeschool. You are required to keep all your records. I can give you a list of what those records are for the state. You are responsible for all costs for education, but again, I said that you can homeschool with $0 and everything else can be enrichment. You can choose your own curricula, activities, enrichment, and tutors. You have complete and total flexibility. There are no testing requirements, although there are opportunities to test if you wish. You write your own transcripts and your education is 100% customizable. And usually the filing period is open. The statutory filing period is open from October 1st through the 15th, although it stays open until July 31st each year. Okay, this is what the website looks like. You go straight to the website and it will walk you through. It's very easy to file that private school affidavit if you'd like.
Okay.
Andy?
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Just to be clear, for anybody that's
What?
not, that finds themselves at home right now, there are no filing requirements.
I can't hear anything.
Hold on. Let me
You hear this?
No, I can't hear you.
But you can hear this.
Yes.
let me.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I don't know what's happening. Can anyone hear me?
Sorry, I think someone came on and I need to. I just needed to mute. Yeah. There we
Gotcha.
go.
So
We're
I just
good.
wanted to say, in case anyone's confused about this important information that you're sharing, currently for people that find themselves at home, there are no filing requirements.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
Yes. I mean, yes, of course. So this is just general if you want to continue homeschooling for next year. So these are just sort of, takeaways to keep in the back of your mind. The records that you keep, and not everybody is comfortable keeping their own school records, and that is completely fine too. So you keep a copy of your PSA, which is usually, online. You keep a faculty record, you make your own faculty record, and you keep attendance records, and then have some sort of outline of your students' curriculum. That can be a list of curricula that you use. It can kind of be a rhythm of what you do. I keep a spreadsheet, and that's just, there are so many ways to do that. So the next option that is very close to a PSA, filing a PSA, is a PSP. It's basically a private school satellite program. It is like a PSA in that they keep the records for you. It's an administrative umbrella for homeschoolers, but they are considered a private school. The cost can vary from a few $100s to a few $1,000s a year, and depending on the PSP, they offer different things. For example, they usually keep all the records for you. They may or may not provide curriculum support. It just depends on which PSP you support, or you want to sign up with. You still choose all the curriculum, activities, enrichment tutors. Education is 100% customizable. The only law that is really, a deal breaker is that the PSP must maintain an office in California, and it files a PSA for you. So that is a legal requirement. Sometimes they have groups, local groups, where you can meet, and sometimes your child can play sports through them as well. So next to public charter homeschooling, this is a little bit more involved. This is one of the most popular ways to homeschool in California. I will say that the numbers that I gave you about the homeschool growth in California, they normally do not necessarily take into consideration public charter homeschools because they are considered public schools. They are considered charter schools. And then they can be broken down into different categories, from homeschooling, virtual, where you do everything online, or just independent study. And every charter is different, so do your research to find out what's best for you. They are technically considered a public school. You must register with a homeschool charter in order to belong to a charter. They keep records and record attendance. And students normally with homeschool charters, not all charters, have access to educational funds provided by the state to help customize education. Some charters actually give you, in lieu of those funds, they actually provide the curriculum for you. And then again, this is a way for every child in California to access homeschooling because you take away that barrier to entry, and because it's a charter school. They're highly encouraged to take part in public testing, so these are things to consider. Each charter is different, so you can pick and choose which ones that work with you. And if you are interested in public charter homeschooling, talk to the charter, ask those questions. Again, education is customizable. Now, this is where it's different. You are required to meet with a credentialed teacher every 20 days or less, and that is considered your teacher of record. With the PSP or a PSA, you are the teacher. You don't have to be credentialed because it is a private school, and private school teachers do not have to be credentialed. Because this is a public charter, you are tied with a credentialed, state credentialed teacher. They are required to collect academic samples each month, and that can definitely vary charter to charter. For example, maybe one charter might want one sample of whatever is required, K through 8. Four subjects are required: math, social studies, language arts, and science. You can choose one. Some charters may require one of each subject or 2 of each subject, so that is just something that you have to ask the charter as well. Some homeschoolers, especially when they're starting out, they love the accountability, and one great thing about having the credentialed teacher is you have someone there to guide you. You usually have customized support, and you can access that anytime. The only thing that about the educational funds, and I can talk a little bit more about them later, they are not to be spent on religious or faith-based material. So again, it's a public school. Also, no money changes hands. It goes from charter to vendor, and each charter approves vendors. So you, as a parent, do not have access to that money at all. Okay. This is just sort of a timeline of what public charters are about. When you sign up with a public charter, you'll start with the baseline testing. It's either STAR 360 or iReady. You have unlimited teacher credential help. Usually, you can have that relationship with your credential teacher. You have access to unique resources, a variety of curriculum. Usually you can choose your curriculum. There are some charters that will give you a list and you have to choose the curriculum from their list, but they usually have pretty good curriculum. You provide academic samples and then you participate in state testing. That means state testing and also the presidential fitness test. You can opt out, but it does hurt the charter. So if you are the type of person who may want to opt out of the state testing, maybe a public charter is not necessarily the way to go because we want to protect our charters. Okay, so one size does not fit all. Obviously, I'm going to kind of go through this. We are stuck at home, so we're not going to be going to field trips or enrichment centers or tutor sharing or we can do online classes. We're not going to be doing learning labs, but usually there are a number of ways that you can homeschool. It's not one size fits all. A lot of people ask about socialization. You're getting a taste of that right now. What you are dealing with at home is not usually what people deal with when they're homeschooling. We usually have meaningful interactions with others. You're having that with your family right now. That's a gift. That's an opportunity. In the midst of all this trial, that is something to be grateful for and to have gratitude for. So students are usually not restricted by age or grade. I usually ask the question, is it socialization or is it peer pressure? And then there can be a certain amount of administrative pressure as well. And you're not going to have that right now. You're just going to have the family pressure, which does take out the pressure. So, and right now the world is our classroom. We just have to access it online because we can't really go anywhere. So these are also some ways that people like to homeschool. And then there are some questions about college, but I don't know if Stefanie wants me to sort of, grace over that right now. But here are just some stats about homeschoolers and college. SAT scores for college-bound homeschoolers were higher than the national average. They're most likely to participate in community service than other adults. I definitely see that in our homeschool community, and we usually try to do some sort of community service at least once a month, even starting with my TKer and my second grader. They usually graduate from colleges at a higher rate and earn a higher grade point average. A lot of colleges are also looking for out-of-the-box students, and that's where homeschoolers fall in. Harvard, for example, has a whole section for homeschoolers and on how to apply. And, we had that college admissions scandal, and there were some stories coming out about homeschoolers and how merit still counts. So usually, this is a very free time. We are not bound by the 9 to 3 right now. We can homeschool whenever our student is fresh, and whenever they learn best. And I think that in the next few weeks, however long it takes, Governor Newsom said that some students may not go back to school this year at all. You'll get to sort of know the rhythm of your student. You can also, if that fits your lifestyle, keep a very regimented schedule, but some people kind of like to treat it a little bit more like summer, but then also, summertime, but then also fold in those learning activities as well. And there's no one size fits all. You don't have to mimic school. So you don't have to start off with doing language arts in the morning and then take a 15-minute break and then do math. And then, no, you can even do block learning. You can spend the whole morning learning math on Monday and then take a break. In the afternoon, maybe if you want, you can read aloud and do some language arts. Tuesday can be a science day, and so on and so forth. And then always use the weekends when the whole family is available. Make it family school, and that's very fun. Finding your tribe, reaching out. I know that it's very hard. That's what we're here for. We're here to add support. But, trying to find people to connect with. I know that a lot of, even my students are connecting with their friends on Zoom. Our co-ops have gone virtual, and they've done everything from, had a very short comedy show this week to an art exhibit on Zoom where everybody got to show their artwork and just kind of goofed around and things like that. So there are some groups, and when you are able to leave the house, there are so many different opportunities to connect with people, especially in California, because homeschooling has grown so much. And then, as the Assemblyman said, perfect is the enemy of good. Follow their lead. Give them a gentle feast. This is a time to kind of go down those little rabbit trails and figure out what you want to learn. I know that my 5-year-old and my 8-year-old right now, we're kind of messing around with learning Latin, and they love it. And my daughter is learning how to figure out how to do product development with her own business, and I'm just kind of following her lead. So she wants to be very entrepreneurial with that. And I think that's great. It's the curiosity. I mean, those are those soft skills that people are hiring for and that entrepreneurs possess. So that's not always what you could get in school. That is, that's beyond that. So also meeting our students where they are. I'm not going to force my 5-year-old to do work that's above him, but I also have very high expectations for him because I know what he's capable of. But he will meet them because he's still excited. He's still excited about learning. Each child unfolds uniquely, and then you can always outsource when needed or desired. My daughter, she's got dyslexia. We pay for Barton tutoring for her, and then we also are exploring some IEP services through our charter as well. And that's just to support her. So she's definitely capable of learning, and we just want to make it as easy for her as possible and give her the best tools in her toolkit so that she has them for the rest of her life. And not only that, but experts love homeschoolers. If you go on Instagram or Facebook or even Twitter, you will find chefs giving free lessons on Instagram, cooking lessons, and it's because they love students. And I can't tell you how many times we've been on a field trip somewhere, for example, to the aquarium, and one of my kids or one of the kids in the group will start asking one of the working conservationists questions, and then it'll turn into a 2-hour individualized seminar. It's very interesting to watch, and then the parents can ask questions as well. So it is very much hands-on learning. As I mentioned before, you can homeschool with $0. There are a lot of free and low-cost resources, and there are probably even more this week. TED Ed is great for explaining a lot of material. Khan Academy, I know they have everything from upper division math help to even Disney Imagineering program, which is amazing if you want to learn how to be a Disney Imagineer. MIT Scratch is a free program or a free service where you can watch classes at MIT. There's also Easy Peasy All-in-One Homeschool if you just want a curriculum. There are curriculum guides like Ambleside Online and Wildwood. You can sign up for a lot of these different programs. LibreBox is actually free. It has free audiobooks, and then check your Hoopla app through your public library. We check out a lot of audiobooks and online books through that, and especially now because we can't go to the library and rent them or check them out. So, and then there are a lot of, as a homeschooler, you can get teacher discounts, so that's always a perk too if you get as many books as we buy. And then let's see, so if you have any questions, I'll turn it over to Stefanie, and then I know that David is gonna speak as well. So
Hi there. I'm out of video right now because I'm helping my son with something, but I'm just going to turn it over to David without any further ado, so he can share, and then we'll do Q&A after Mike Smith from HSLDA comes on after David. So take it away, David.
What do you desire for your child? This is the ultimate question I think all of us parents got to be thinking about. Thank you, Andi, Jody, Stefanie, for putting this event together, because we are at an epic time in human history. And I'll tell you a little about myself in a second here, but one of my missions in life is to remove as many children as I can from the government monopoly compulsory school system. Why? Because I consider that a day prison and something that violates human rights. So as I mentioned, my name is David James Rodriguez here. I'm actually a principal of a private school using the PSA. I do accelerated graduation. I do homeschool consulting. And the benefit for you today is I'm going to go over the 5 phases of homeschooling success. And then something which I just created in the last few days is called the 7 tips for reluctant homeschoolers. So some of you on this line or watching this video might be forced into homeschooling. So I know that seems like a bad thing to be, but in my opinion, homeschooling is the future. And self-directed learning is actually the term I prefer. So before we jump into all this, I want to go through the 5 phases of homeschooling success. Number 1 is forced schooling, which is default, and over 50 million children in the US, 600 million children worldwide are mandated to be in a building and have mandatory curriculum. You got to get permission to use a bathroom, to get a drink of water. You don't have any freedom. This is a violation of rights, in my opinion. Number 2 is deschooling. Andi touched on that. Deschooling is where you actually unlearn what you learned in the public school system, because like me, I went to the public school system, and maybe you did too. We're taught, we sit there, it's passive, and somebody else comes along and they give us the assignment, they give us a test, and that's schooling. That's not true education in my opinion. Number 3 is school at home, and this is better than being in the school building. However, when you bring those textbooks home and you're sitting at the kitchen table, and they say now it's time for math or science or language arts, in my opinion, that's school at home, and you want to evolve to the next couple stages. The next 2 stages are homeschooling, which I define as when a leader creates an atmosphere where personalized learning can occur. This is what's so important. I forgot to mention, I did work with the world famous John Taylor Gatto, and he taught us all that an education should be as unique as our fingerprints. So having 7 billion people on the planet, your child, your son or daughter is unique and rare among all of them. You want to pay attention, and you know your child better than anyone, so you can personalize that atmosphere. And generally that atmosphere is relaxed, informal, loving, safe, and you create that as a homeschool leader. The final phase, which I would say this entire curve takes between 2 to 3 years. Hopefully we can accelerate this in the next 6 months, because it looks like we're not going to be in school until fall. The final stage is unschooling, or more accurately defined is self-directed learning, 100% self-directed learning. Just like what you're doing right now, so am I. We're learning. It's a Sunday evening. We're not doing this for grades. We're not doing this for money. We're doing this so we can help our children. And this is what an educated person does. They direct themselves. And then if you look in the education journals and all the scientific stuff, they do have something called the self-directing executive function. As Andi mentioned, her daughter's starting a business. That's great. Every person should start their own business if they can. But most importantly is understanding that this is their life. Okay. So those are the 5 stages: forced schooling, deschooling, school at home, homeschooling, and unschooling. Keep that in mind as we go throughout these 7 tips that I'm going to give to you. And before we do that, there's something called curriculum. This is one of the biggest questions I get as I consult with parents, is what type of curriculum do I use? And again, we have to go back. We have to redefine, what are we doing? What do you desire for your child? Generally, you parents, we want young people to be happy and healthy and independent. This is probably a good generic definition of success. And if that's our aim, we got to keep that in the forefront of our mind. What do I desire? Happy, healthy, independent. And then the challenge again is our own school mind. Now, before I continue to thrash the public school system, you got to know My mom is a retired public school teacher, and I have family members who are principals and teachers in the school system now. I love them all. They're sweet, loving people, and they're part of a hierarchy. And I'll go through some of this in a minute here, but understand the history of where the system came from is super important. It is a $700 billion business, which is 50 times larger than the NFL and larger than Walmart. So you can imagine all the money that is being transacted in the name of helping children when in fact they are indoctrinating your child. So what is a curriculum? What does that mean? A curriculum, the original root, Latin root, means a path, a course. So if your child is unique among all 7 billion people, who can tell them what is the proper path? Nobody can, right? They have to discover this for themselves. And so I consider the curriculum to be something that they are doing now in the moment, because the most powerful thing I think a student has, a learner has, is their excitement, is their curiosity, is their enthusiasm, is their interest. Because the worst thing is when someone tries to force you to learn something and you don't have any interest in what they're trying to teach you. How many of us have those stories of going back into public school and we have to take a test? We got to do an assignment on interest. It's not what we want to do. That's school at home. So there's a bunch of curriculum out there. I have a Facebook group called Homeschool Leader. It's free for now. You're welcome to join. I got over 20 curriculums on there. I'll just talk about one or two right now. One is the World as a Classroom curriculum. And again, Andy mentioned that because this is a truth. We're always learning everywhere we go, inside our house, at the grocery store, at the hospital, at church, and wherever, in nature specifically, we're always learning. So again, we got to define that. And then if you look at the root word of education, education means to draw from within, to pull out. So what Pablo Picasso said, every child's a born artist. The challenge is remain an artist. And what Buckminster Fuller said, he said, every child is a born genius. The challenge is they get de-geniused, trying to please their teachers and please their parents. So we have to redefine education and actually deprogram ourselves on what are we doing here. I don't consider a curriculum something you memorize and regurgitate. This is what school taught us, and it's complete opposite of what a truly educated person is. So check out some of those curriculums in that Facebook group if you want. And now the 7 tips for the reluctant homeschooler. Number 1, take a deep breath. You don't have to feel like a tsunami of overwhelm, a tsunami of responsibility. You don't have to be the master of 7 subjects, all these things from the schoolese that we learned. Rest, take a breath. You totally got this. And you can do this. This has been proven for thousands of years. And the reason is that self-care is number 1. If mama or daddy, whoever's doing the homeschooling, are doing it together, if you guys ain't happy, nobody's happy, okay? The most important is the woman in the mirror, the man in the mirror. You got to take care of that person. You don't have to run around and do what the neighbors are doing or do what this mainstream media is telling you to do, whatever. Focus on what you desire for your child and focus on your own health, your own peace of mind. This is really important. And you ever been on an airplane and they say, in the case of emergency, the oxygen mask come down. Put your oxygen mask on first and then put it on your child, right? Normally we think, no, we got to put it on my child first. No, we got to take care of ourselves first. So breathe. If you're into prayer, pray, meditate, whatever you do, but you got to take care of that soul, that being that is inside of you right now, because you are the one. You're leading your family or co-creating with your spouse, or maybe you're single, whatever it is. Take a deep breath. It's totally doable. It's been proven throughout history. You're not alone. There's 2 to 3, maybe as many as 4 million homeschoolers in the US. And now it's been going on for a couple of generations. So there's actually adult homeschoolers, and you can go out and meet these adult homeschoolers and understand they're totally fine. These self-directed people, and they're beautiful. As Andy mentioned, the colleges love homeschoolers because they're serious about learning. They're not at college because they're forced to be there. They actually want to learn, so they love them. Number 2, tip for reluctant homeschoolers, please differentiate between education and schooling. In my definition, education is what you do to yourself to create a good life. A schooling is what somebody else does to you to benefit them. And but I told you I'm going to slam the public school system. The state is an organization. The schools are funded by property taxes. I consider property taxes to be theft and unacceptable. So education is what you do to yourself. And as the previous speaker mentioned, it can be free. We are now talking on the most revolutionary communication technology in the history of humanity, video communication. There's something called Google, YouTube. There's a bunch of other platforms where you can get this information for free. So again, you want to cultivate and nurture their interest, their passion, their questions. Whenever you see them talk about something and you see their eyes light up, that is an indicator, mom and dad, that they're interested in that, and you want to facilitate some of those activities or books or movies or experts around those things. Also, can you actually give your child an education? Can you give it to them, or do they have to give it to themselves? The analogy is this: can you give somebody six-pack abdomen muscles, right? If somebody says, hey, I want six packs, can you give them to them? No. What you can do, you can give them a gym membership, you can show them, you can give them the ab exercises, but if they're serious about getting a six-pack abs, they gotta do it themselves. And this is the same thing for our children. We cannot give them an education, in my opinion. We can facilitate, we can nurture, we can cultivate, we can love, we can support, we can encourage. But if that child wants to become literate, passionate, successful, and all the great things, fully self-expressed, courageous, virtuous, it's up to them. And so this is why love is the most important lesson in the homeschooling adventure, in my opinion. And so number 3 tip for reluctant homeschoolers is clarify your values. What's important to you guys? What matters in your life? Because all this other GPA, SAT, all this other, I call it malarkey, because I have a business degree and did well in school, but nobody's ever asked for my GPA or college degree evidence or any of those things. Have they asked you? All the people that I've spoke to, like, they've never asked for these things. So, but you do want to have a portfolio of success. But what matters in your life? Is it the heart-to-heart connection with your son or daughter? Or is it a spotless house, right? Because I see a lot of parents struggle with this because they were raised in homes where it was a spotless house. And so they're whipping, and that's metaphorical, but like they're like being maybe violent with their language, not intentional, it's all subconscious. But I think if we can focus on the intentional reason, like what matters? Because if we're unconscious in our communication, then we say, you got to clean your room, you got to clean up this stuff. But then in our child, they have a broken heart. So what matters? Is it courage in your house? Is it respect? Is it trust? Is it family unity? What is it? You know, sit down and write down, what do you value? Is it religious values, personal values? Whatever the case might be, we got to take your time as you're breathing, as you're meditating and praying. What matters to you? What's important? Fulfillment, career, purpose, money. All these things can be important, but you want to identify the top 2 or 3 so that as you're facilitating for your child, you give them a model of somebody who is practicing these values. And it's not going to happen overnight. Trust me, I'm still deprogramming, deschooling myself from all the schooly stuff that I've learned. But again, as we become educated people, pursuing and learning, our values are what drive our beliefs, our thoughts, and our actions, and ultimately our results. Number 4 tip for reluctant homeschoolers. This is a fill in the blank. If somebody's taking notes out there, or maybe you're playing a mental follow along with me, fill in the blank after this sentence. Life is blank. What comes to mind when you hear that phrase? Life is blank. Because that's going to give you an indicator of what your philosophy on life is. And if you don't have a philosophy on life, like I didn't, all throughout school and college, I had to read, personal development groups and get some mentors and like redefine success. What is life? Some people say life is a dance. I love that. Life is love. Life is joy. Life is a game. Life is work. Life is drudgery. Whatever your definition is, that's how you're going to show up, because our children come in, they do have their own genetics and their own kind of personalities, but they're watching us. And if they see you living life as drudgery versus seeing you life is joy, life is a gift, then they're going to behave and feel differently. Maybe some of you have attended funerals in your life. I have, so I know for a fact life is a gift. This moment is a gift. I got so much love and respect for you guys for being here, learning about this stuff, because this matters. Transferring these ideas to our children is everything. This is the whole ball game. That's why I get so fired up about it. Okay, number 5 tip for reluctant homeschools. Look up this book called The Top 5 Regrets of Dying. And the reason I bring this up is because we rarely think about that in terms of empowerment. We think of death as scary. No one knows what's happening, whether you believe in spiritual afterlife or not. This lady who wrote the book, she was a nurse, and she was helping people in the last 2 or 3 months of their life. And she started asking them, what do you regret about your life? And this is relevant because if we can keep that in our mind, our children are 5 or 8 or 10 or 14, but if we can have their 70-year-old self, their 80 or 90-year-old self in mind, then we can act with wisdom and with intention and purpose. And here's the top 5 regrets. Number 1, I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. Doesn't that hit you in your heart? Number 2, I wish I hadn't worked so much. Number 3, I wish I had the courage to express my feelings. So this is why I say I love you to a lot of the people out there, because there's no such thing as wasted love, and we express ourselves and we feel more alive. Number 4, I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. Number 5, I wish I had let myself be happier. Again, this is from a nurse who asked people on their deathbed, what did they regret? So those are very strong lessons for us as homeschool facilitators and leaders to model for our child, because they're looking at us. And if we know that they want to live a life true to themselves, they want to express their feelings, then we will create that space for them, that safe space. So whether they're having a bad attitude of anger or sadness and crying or emotion, all of that's well. We want the full expression of their humanity, and then to live a life that's up to them, and not working so much, right? The opposite of work is play, but the real dream is to find something that feels like play to you, and then you can do that as a career. This is all possible now with the internet. It might have been difficult, 20, 30, 40 years ago, but now we're able to meet all kinds of people online and do that. So those are the 5 regrets. I was really touched when West Beach introduced me to that at my Education Options Expo. And by the way, I have a YouTube channel called Education Options TV. You can see some of the speeches that he gave and other speakers from around the country. Number 6, know that forced state schooling was created by social engineers, but homeschooling is proven and time-tested for millennia. I mentioned John Gatto. I did help facilitate the republication of this book, The Underground History. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to give you a quote from 1903, the General Education Board, the advisor to John D. Rockefeller. This is going to blow your mind, I think. Frederick Gates, he said, quote, in our dream, the people yield themselves with perfect docility to our molding hand. We shall not try to make these people or any of their children into philosophers or men of learning or of science. We are not to raise up from among them authors, orators, poets, or men of learning. We shall not search for embryo great artists, painters, musicians, nor will we raise up from among them lawyers, doctors, preachers, politicians, statesmen, of whom we now have ample supply. This is over 100 years ago, and this started the beginning of the compulsory school system. It actually started in 1852 in Boston, Massachusetts, but the entire state system was strongly influenced by Rockefeller and some of his cronies. So you can look that up in the book. And there's speeches by John Taylor Gatto as well. Look up the history of schooling. There's an epic 5-hour interview called The Ultimate History Lesson. Take a look at that. Amazing information about what's really going on. And the counterpoint is that homeschooling was de facto. It was default. You were around people you loved. You were raising the livestock, planting the seeds on the farm, and you were learning with your hands-on learning. And so homeschool's proven. It's the forced schooling system that's been a social experiment in this country for about 150 years, over 200 years in Germany. And that's why we see the society being dumbed down. They did not learn proper critical thinking because these guys designed it that way. And it's a really nasty history. Take a look you'll become as angry as I am and John Gatto or the people, and then we create solutions. And that's what we're doing today. Sending blessings to you guys. And the last tip for the reluctant homeschooler, enjoy time with your child, because one day he or she will be moving out. And this is the heartbreak of all, because we love our children, we pour into them, and by the time they're 17, 18, 19, 20, 22, they're like, hey, mom, I'm going to college. And you say, no, stay. I love you. You know, you're a great parent person. Stay here, please. And so, truthfully, I didn't know my mother's love until I was like 20 or 21. I had been in college for a couple years and I came back, and my mom, she brought me this like beautiful dinner and just giving me all, and I was like, oh my gosh, mom, I finally realized you've been doing this for like 18 years while I was here. And so that love of the mother, the love of the father, and the family is felt. But when they leave, that's when they can see how challenging the world really is. And so enjoy the time. This is precious time. And so even if your child's 4 having a temper tantrum, or 8 or 10 or whatever age they are, if you can put it in context that one day, this loving son and daughter of mine that I created in love and birthed in love, they will move out one day. So this is the 7th step there. So those are some of the things I wanted to give you today in terms of starting you off on the process. There's a lot of other things we can talk about: apprenticeships, mentorships. These are things that I do as well. But I want to leave it there. The 5 phases of homeschooling: foreschooling, deschooling, school at home, homeschooling, and unschooling or self-directed learning. And then the 7 tips for the reluctant homeschoolers out there. Take a deep breath. Take care of yourself. Self-care. Number 2, differentiate between education and schooling. Number 3, clarify your values. What's important to you? What matters? Number 4, figure out your life philosophy. Life is blank. Fill in the blank. Number 5, look up the top 5 regrets of dying. Number 6, know that forced state schooling was created by social engineers, and homeschooling is proven and time tested for thousands of years. And number 7, enjoy the precious time that you have with your child, because one day they will be gone. And so we all will be gone one day, but for right now, we're here, we're talking about solutions. And I think this platform is going to be very empowering for parents, not just in California, but as you mentioned, Jody's in Colorado, around the country, around the world. We are at an epic time in human history, despite you believe in the scariness of this flu or the false flag nature of it, whatever it is. We're going to be with our families, we're going to be together, and there's a bunch of activities you can do. But if you have these frameworks in your mind, I think you'll be able to figure out some of these difficult questions that we covered today. So I'm very happy to answer some questions. I'm very happy to be with you all this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you so
David?
much.
Thank you so much, David. Sorry about that, Andi, to jump in on you.
That's okay.
I appreciate both of you sharing so much and spending time with us tonight. I think Mike Smith from HSLDA is calling in right now. I don't know. Does anybody see him? Andi, do you see him?
I'm looking for him. I'm not sure I see.
He just messaged me and said he was calling in. So I suppose we could get started with Q&A, and then when he jumps on, we'll give him the floor. He's just going to talk for a couple minutes. So let's open it up for Q&A. We also have Allie Adair and Jody Parker, and there are probably a couple of other seasoned.
Hello, Stefanie.
Oh, there's Mike. All right, so we'll pause that for just a second. Mike Smith, who is the co-founder of Homeschool Legal Defense Association, is on the line from Virginia right now. Thanks, Mike, for calling in. I'm going to go ahead and mute out.
Okay, thank you. Hello, is everybody there?
Yes, we're here.
Yes,
Okay,
good to hear you.
what would
Welcome
you
to the show.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. So basically my hope is to be able to help the folks in terms of folks that might be thinking about homeschooling and just need some advice on what to do. And essentially every state, and I don't know how many folks you have involved here, but every state has their own what are called compulsory attendance laws. You have to have a child in public school or be properly exempted. and every state has some kind of homeschool exemption. California being the biggest homeschool state, basically you operate as a private school, and there's a filing requirement, and there's a certain time at which you have to file documents. The same thing applies for most of the other states around California there. It's a fairly easy thing to do, but it's something you have to do, and then you have to know what the law is in order to be able to be compliant with the homeschool law. And the thing about it, for folks that are out of school right now, and I guess most of the states are out of school right now, so compulsory attendance is not being enforced. So essentially, this is an opportunity to relax and try to figure out what you're going to do when school starts again. But you don't have to do anything until school kicks back in, because they're not enforcing truancy or compulsory attendance. So I think that's a good briefing. HSLDA has been in business for 38 years, and we're coming up on our 40th years. And so we have a website to help anybody that has any questions about homeschooling, including curriculum, et cetera. All you have to go is to hslda.org. That's hslda.org, and just /getting started. So I think that's enough for now, and so I'd be willing to answer any questions or if there's any further discussion on that.
Yeah, Mike, I have a question. So you've been doing this for decades. I appreciate the service to humanity and families out there. What are some of the greatest threats that we see from the state? Because we know it's a $700 billion enterprise, mandated attendance is how they get their money. What are some of the threats that you see for parents, and then maybe as a whole for the entire homeschooling society or industry itself?
Well, the threats for parents are the same threats of parents that have their kids in public school. The belief with some states, it's not all, but some, is that parents really can't be trusted to educate or even raise their children. And so there's always the nanny state, big government that's always trying to intrude on parents making decisions. For instance, in California, several years ago, you used to be able to just exempt your child from vaccinations through a personal exemption. Today, you can't do that. That's a classic example of the government saying, you know what, we don't really trust parents to make the right decisions, health decisions, medical decisions, education decisions even. And so what we do find in states that already have good homeschool laws, about 4 or 5 states every year will try to reduce the freedom that parents have to teach their kids at home. And let's be honest about homeschooling. The reason that the genius of homeschooling is the flexibility of it. In other words, not being set by a certain schedule, a certain curriculum, a certain time, a certain test, et cetera, and it goes on and on. So you really have an opportunity to give every child an individualized instruction. As you know, that's something that the teachers union and a lot of education establishment, they just don't believe in that. They just don't think parents should have that right. So we always have that threat. We're always fighting it back, but so far we've been very successful.
Yeah, you guys have a great track record. If you guys haven't checked out their website, please do, and support them by becoming a member. What experience have you had in suing districts or people, or like say districts or unions when they harm children or they violate the rights of parents? Because I'm talking to some other people who are actually starting to do lawsuits towards these tyrannical measures regarding the state and what they're doing. But in terms of the education world, which you have a lot of experience in, do you ever sue these districts or unions or teachers, or how do you come back with the law if they overreach and start harming children and harming families?
Yeah, the lawsuits are rare because you have to show, you have to file what's called a civil rights lawsuit against, when you sue a government, they're immune from most everything they do, so you can't win in court. So in order to win, you have to show that they violated a constitutional right of a person and they knew or should have known that they were violating that right. That's a hard standard to win. We have won cases in New York just recently against the city of Manhattan. We did file a lawsuit, and they settled with us out of court because they were basically sicking social workers on parents just because their paperwork didn't get in, and a lot of times it was actually the school district's fault there in Manhattan. They were just, the bureaucracy was overburdened with paperwork, and so they would lose people's papers, and they would send social workers out. We've sued them. We have 2 lawsuits. We've sued them. in New York just recently. That's an example. And they settled out of court. And they actually paid our client money, and then we got a restraining order against them, an actual order. So that's the kind of suits we file.
So we have a
Nice.
question from Valisic. Did you want to, I unmuted you in case you wanted to ask your question. The question is, how do you teach your children to differentiate yourself from mother to teacher when you start? I find teachers and other adults may get more respect and a better behaved child. My children are very good, but of course they don't always want to obey. So I guess in my situation is, I mean, there is something that happens even with me. Sometimes, I mean, I'm a very extroverted person and I keep it together. And then sometimes I get home and I just want to be who I am. I think when you take that out of the equation and you just let your kids be who they are and give them the stake, it's what David was talking about, you know, the personalization, giving them that stake in their own education, asking them, hey, what are the, maybe the top 5, top 3 things that you want to learn today, other than the things that, you know, are non-negotiable in your household, and help them kind of facilitate that and use that as an incentive also. You know, and then I think that people are probably so stuck on schedules. And I find that a lot of families, I know with my family, we kind of have a rhythm instead of going by schedules. I might have a framework of a schedule, but then when we get the rhythm down, and that can be kind of an ever evolving thing as well. And I do have the luxury of doing that and working my work around, you know, what the kids are doing and vice versa. And it's always good to take breaks when you need to take breaks as well. It goes back to that deschooling as well.
Andi, if I could just add to that, and this might sound kind of silly, but when we've always homeschooled the kids because of health concerns. And when we first started homeschooling, I literally got a hat that it said San Clemente on it or something. I don't even remember what it said, but I just told them, when I'm wearing the hat, I'm your teacher and we're having school. And when I'm not wearing the hat, I'm mommy. I didn't have to wear the hat very long because they got, like you just said, they understood the rhythm. And as we've gotten more and more into it, the girls are in 10th grade now, we've sort of evolved into realizing that we don't have to do school like school does it, but we're doing school at home, so it's different. But I needed that physical, like, okay, I've got my teacher hat on now, and it seemed to help us in the beginning.
And Heidi Light actually in the comments section made a very good point. In her experience, you have to repair the parent-child relationship before you worry about academics. And I think that that's a very valuable thing to keep in mind as well. And it goes back to teaching the heart as well as the mind, or not even teaching, it's cultivating the heart issues. There may be days where you just listen to each other and reconnect, walk in nature, play games together, and just kind of be that kid again, be that mom schooler, and to try to you know, reconnect with your child. But then also I would also say maybe also approaching everything in gratitude and sort of modeling that as well. Show your child that you're grateful for the opportunity to be able to guide him or her, and give them a stake in their own education as well. So
Yeah, Vaselik, those are all good answers. I want to share also something, Vaselik. For me, since I believe the world is a classroom, I know for a fact that I'm always learning as an educated person. It's not something, obedience is not something I want for children in my world. I want them to be reasonable, logical, critical thinkers, compassionate, peaceful, respectful, loving people. And as much as we'd like to, like Stefanie said, she has the hat on, she has the hat off. Even when we take the hat off, our children are still watching us. They're observing us. They're following our language patterns. That's why we say stuff to our children that our parents said to us. Like when we get like stressed out or something, we say stuff to our kids because in our subconscious, our parents downloaded their language patterns and their emotional states to us. So we just like, it just comes out of us naturally. So if you want an obedient child, then you might have to think of some tactics to create obedience. But I think the future is all about creativity. It's all about imagination. It's about collaboration. It's about stepping into your potential, being courageous. And those things don't come from obedient people. Those things come from people who are supported throughout their emotional life. And they'll pick up the ball at some point. I don't know how old your child is, you know, Vaselik, My guess is they're probably younger, but sometimes even if they're 10 or 12, again, there's that deschooling phase. So if you bring your child home from a day prison, I know that's a strong word, but you need permission to go to the bathroom, permission to get a drink of water. You're never going to have to get permission again. They came from this terrible forced mandatory system, and now you're giving them freedom. They're going to want to express themselves and be all over the place. But as she mentioned before, find out who they are. Let them discover themselves. And also, as my mentor said, he said, we don't discover ourselves, we create ourselves. And this is what's so amazing is the human experience. If we become conscious of self, we can now create something of ourselves. We can create a life that we love, so that when we're on our deathbed, when we're 80, 90, 110 years old, we can say, I did it with my life. Yes, I went for it. I was courageous. I expressed myself. I stayed in contact with my friends. I lived a life true to myself. And so this is the focus. So obedience versus living a life that you love are two different things that you got to work out within your own household. But I would think if you have a clear desire for your child, and also start to research. I mentioned John Gatto, John Holtzgood, Peter Gray has some great books and talks. There's people who've explored this area that is very scary. And I didn't realize how scary it was until a couple of my clients said that, like, this is the scariest decision of my life. I said, oh my gosh, it is, because we think we're going to ruin our child. However, if we demonstrate love, demonstrate respect and peace and compassion, I think those are some of the best lessons that we can be, not as our teacher of our child, but as the facilitator, the guide, the coach, and the encourager.
And I think that maybe the attitude has to be not towards your child only, but towards yourself too, giving yourself some grace, giving your child some grace too, because we're not perfect. We don't have to be perfect for our children. We just have to meet them where they are. And sometimes we may not be in the best place. You know, I mean, I know that in my house, I've been very stressed out. It seems like things are ever evolving hour to hour, and I'm waiting, you know, I'm getting alerts that the White House is speaking and the governor's speaking. And what does this mean? Does this mean that we're going to, you know, is my husband's business going to get shut down? Our friend's business going to get shut down? So it is very in uncertain times. So give yourself grace, give your family grace, especially in times of extreme stress. And I'll be honest with you. I mean, you know, I'm a planner. I can visualize things 2 to 5 years in advance. I'm just kind of that weird recovering type A personality. In November, we were kind of hit blindsided, and I joke about it, where we had the book of Job happen. We found toxic levels of mold in our house. We had to move in a hurry, moved into a friend's a house that our friend had vacant for 6 months. And so we're here for now. And it's what we needed to do, because we had to find a safe place. And then on top of that, we were sick for 2 months and had to discard most of our belongings, because that's what happens when you're in toxic mold. So a lot of the academics, it was very bare bones compared to what we do. I usually have our beauty loops planned out in advance, the songs we're going to learn, you know, whatever social studies that we're into. And it was very bare bones during that time, because our bodies and our hearts needed more attention than our minds. Now we're in this place where, okay, we're settled, we're healthy, we're waiting it out, and we are just learning new things left and right. We're following these little rabbit tails everywhere we go. And, you know, I mean, that's sort of the ebb and flow of life. And if something's not working, I know that David talked a lot about the curriculum. We use curriculum. My daughter, I'm more of probably like a Waldorf, Charlotte Mason, classical inspired, eclectic, unschooly, lots of field trips, lots of nature, observation, hands-on. But you know, I chose this math curriculum that was very story-based. It was beautiful, beautiful pictures for my daughter. She's such an artist. She hated it. She wanted something very straightforward. So I honored that. Mid-year, I said, okay, we're throwing out the other curriculum. We're going to start this. And then she finally really loved that. Turns out she's very good at mental math as well. So that was me figuring out, and I had to do that by observation, talking to her, trying to meet heart to heart. to figure out exactly the way she learned best as well. So she having a stake in her own education made her want to be a little bit more motivated. And I know that Carolyn was talking about, you know, what about adult children or teenage children as well? And I guess not kids, teenage students as well. I mean, it's never too late to reconnect and cultivate that understanding and, to give some of that freedom as well.
Yeah, I want to say something too. Stephanie had a great point. She's like, she raised these 3 kids and now they're like, preteens or teenagers and they have strong opinions. And I was like that way growing up too. And so my mom had to sit me down a couple of times to be like, hey, like you're hurting my feelings. And so I was like, whoa, really? So it's okay to express, hey, your strong opinions are your opinions, but like, that's hurting my heart. Like, I understand like you don't like this or whatever, that's cool. But like, my emotions matter too. Your emotions matter too. Everyone's needs matter. So this is a family unit, right? So this is where you have a philosophy of your family. This is another conversation, but what are you trying to create, with your kids, with your spouse, your single, your extended family? What are we trying to create here? And as we mentioned, the regrets of dying is we don't express our feelings. And so as a man, it's never okay to cry or whatever, but my mom was teaching me it's okay to cry, these kind of things. And so it's hard because the schools drill it out of you, but now you don't want to duplicate that system at home. You want to really, I think the purpose of life, one of them is love, feeling, giving, receiving, experiencing. And so to have that intention, now you can have that space where everybody can feel that. And so if the kids are being like super maybe abusive with their words or whatever, and they're being maybe not intentionally that way, just unconsciously saying harsh things, you can sit down and you can cry with them, and express your emotions with them. And they'll say, oh, I see. Yeah, I'm being hurtful to my mom or my dad. I didn't know that. And that can reset the relationship on, oh, this is a human being. We're all humans. We have emotions. We have up days and down days. But like ultimately, you want to support each other and help each other because one day we're not going to be here. And this is a quick life or a quick ride of life. And we want to be able to say, I express myself, I express love, and I was able to receive love. And it's a happy ending for everybody.
And I'm looking in the comments here, and Alexandra Adair Chung said that we are our children's first and safest opportunity and opportunity to learn. And working together, it is wonderful, and it's okay. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And David, what you were talking about with the 5 regrets of dying, you mentioned your friends more. You don't have to homeschool alone. That is a fallacy. You don't even have to be at home. Well, you have to be at home right now. But normally in a normal homeschool situation, you don't have to be at home. We are rarely home. We are out at enrichment, taking art classes. Sometimes I take art classes with the kids. We are learning about seabirds at the beach. We are learning about tide pools at the beach. We are going and learning about frogs and counting them at the Arboretum and the nature centers. We're doing all these things that are hands-on, and it becomes real, it becomes tangible, and it becomes life. I mean, it's kind of like when you're in college and you go out into the field. You have your classroom and then you go out into the field. What if you just took your classroom and made it field work all the time and experienced it? And for us, we are going stir crazy. I will be honest with you. It is hard. My son's 5 years old. We have a trampoline in our living room. I use it sometimes for rebounding. And it is hard. So we do try to take some, with our social distancing, walks around our neighborhood, maybe to the beach, and, say hi to our neighbors, even check on them. How are you doing? How's your dog doing? And I think that that's also very important, is to connect with those people. If I feel like I am a little over my head in certain parts of math, okay, I mean, I have 2 master's degrees, but I still hate math. I've always hated it. I shouldn't say I hate it. It's not my favorite. My husband might take on, but also trying to relate it to the kids, because I have my mental blocks as well from when I was a kid and I was in school and I didn't do very well in math. It's hard for me to extend that to my children. So it's fine. I will sign them up for a math class. I will get a math tutor for them, even if it's for 6 weeks, to kind of get over those humps. It's okay to outsource. It's okay to organize co-ops with friends and learn together as a group as well. So, and yes, Mike is still on. Donna, did you have a question for him? Okay, so let's see. Teaching textbooks saved my sanity. Yes, does anybody have any questions for Mike? Here, I'm going to go ahead and mute everybody right now. Whoever needs.
Hey, Stephanie?
Does anybody have anything? Here we go, Donna. So Donna and Mike, this question is for you. Donna asked, Mike mentioned exemptions in California. How does that affect homeschooling? I can answer that, but Mike can also answer that as well. Right now, it does not impact. I'm assuming you're talking about the vaccination exemptions. That does not. It is written in SB 277 that independent study, they don't call it homeschooling, but independent study is exempt from the vaccination laws, as is 276. So right now, charter schools, even whether it's a PSA, remember PSA, you're filing your own private school in the state of California or signing up with the PSP. Certain PSPs may have that requirement, but that is up to them because they're considered a private school. And then most charter schools, but not all of them, will, because they're considered ISPs, independent study programs, do not require vaccinations. Now, always check if you do choose to sign up with a charter school, because some may. And it's maybe because they have enrichment centers, or that's just their policy. It's written into their charter. And then David has a question for Mike.
Yes, Mike. So we're seeing the forced ending of school here for the spring, and also the forced vaccines in, I think it's over 14 states. Is there any other factor that's affecting homeschoolers more than those things right now, or anything
No.
on the horizon that you've seen?
No, those are the two things. And as far as the vaccinations in California, home-based private schools are totally exempt, and also the PSPs. Technically, I don't think the charter schools are. I know some of them are not, or they're telling their folks that they don't have to vaccinate, but if they got challenged, they would lose. So you just have to be careful about that. But for certain, if you're homeschooling and filing a private school affidavit or enrolled in a PSP where your instruction is taking place at home, you're not under the vaccinations. That vaccination requirement in California, but in New York, we just had the same thing happen there. The only exemption in New York now is health, and it's hard to get that one. And so a whole bunch of people are now homeschooling because of that in California, because the homeschoolers are not subject to the vaccination requirement. So that's a big issue. And then a whole bunch of kids being out of school. If I could just offer one thought, just listening to you folks about homeschooling based upon our experience, is for parents that are considering, just remember that you're not going to bring school into your home. You can't do that. If you do that, you might as well not even bring them home. It's a totally different experience, and you're learning together. It basically is a thing you do together with your children. And I ask parents, who learns the most? Parents learn more than their kids. Secondly, you don't have to do a lot of time. Believe it or not, your kids are not learning much, and there's a whole lot of wasted time in public schools. My wife did 2 to 3 hours a morning. They were off in the afternoon. They could do their own thing, and then they were off Friday. Now, everybody's different, but I just want to let you know that you can relax. This is not that hard to do. The hardest part will be having the kids around you all the time, because if you're not used to it, you got to get used to it. But finally, your goal, as David is saying, is relationships. Because if you were to homeschool and create an Einstein, but at 20 or 21 years of age, your child never wanted to have anything to do with you again, you would regret that. So all through the process, just remember, they're people just like you are. We all make mistakes. Give a lot of grace. You have to have discipline. There's no doubt about that. But the learning experience is a learning together, and it's to develop relationships. And just being around you as an adult, more than they're around their peers, they will mature and learn like you can't believe.
Thank you so much. And then another question is, do you think that there will be legislation for homeschoolers? I guess the vaccine.
I don't, let's put it this way. At some point, there may be an attempt to do with that home-based private exemption. That may come. It hasn't yet. And it's been 3 years since we got that. So I'm hoping the longer we stay away from it, if we don't have some emergency again, some health emergency that deals with vaccinations, I don't think we will.
So Mike, I have this question, you know, being an attorney, with the California state constitution that extends a free and public education to all students in California if they want it, you know, regardless of whether they are, you know, undocumented, unvaccinated, special needs. How do you think that is, would that be an argument as well against the mandatory vaccination laws?
No, they're two different things, so it doesn't apply. The problem with trying to win a case in court on vaccination, you're probably not going to do it. It's been tried. There's a Supreme Court case that's directly on point that basically says that the state has the right to make these laws regarding vaccinations. Now, if they tried to do away or make every child vaccinated, obviously we'd challenge that. But there are options that you don't have to vaccinate. You still have the health in California, and then the private school exemption. So, no, you couldn't win that.
Okay. Well, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions for Mike before he leaves? He's on the East Coast, so I'm sure he probably wants to go to bed. Get ready for the Monday. And
yeah, Mike, do you deal with CPS regarding vaccines, or because what happens is that some nosy neighbors, you know, these people, kids run around, and probably not now, well, maybe now because we're supposed to be, you know, shelter in place in California. Do you have preemptive strategies with dealing with CPS, or is it always post after the fact? Or a lot of parents are afraid of CPS because of their track record and reputation. How do you preempt engaging with CPS, whether it's vaccine related or your kids are running around at 12 p.m. in the day? Do you have any ideas or suggestions for parents out there?
Well, you can't preempt it, and you don't want to be a slave to your house. And so somebody could say, well, they're outside running around, the kids are outside running around. So you don't want, during school hours, if you're homeschooling, when school is back in session, you just want to be wise about that. You don't want your kids out all the time. Make sure that if they are, if they're traveling by themselves for some reason, that they've got an appropriate excuse, like going back and forth to work and they have a note or an ID or something like that. But as far as the CPS is concerned, preemptively, it's hard to stop them because you don't know what they're doing. They get reports and then they come out. They don't call ahead of time. They just show up at your house. So our member families call us. We have a 24-hour, they can call us 24/7, 365. We have an emergency line. We have an attorney on duty at all times. And so that's how we handle it. We advise them of their Fourth Amendment rights. Regarding vaccinations, the only remedy really for not vaccinating is exclusion from school. There's no criminal violations for that. Now, that doesn't mean to say the legislature couldn't do something. But right now, what it is if you don't vaccinate in a public school, they kick you out.
Right.
And that's it. So that's it. That's the only remedy they have.
Oh, so Rona had a question. What states are safest to protect homeschoolers and vaccination status?
What? Say that again?
Which states are safest to protect homeschooling and vaccination status? I think
I like California. I like California. It's one of the safest for that. Now, that doesn't mean that legislature couldn't do something, but you never know. Like Virginia, I live in Virginia. Virginia was considered to be one of the more conservative states. They switched in one election, and the legislature went completely to the left. They were trying, actually, one of the proposed pieces of legislation that was introduced would give a child at the age of 13 or 14, they could make their own decisions regarding whether they want to be vaccinated or not. This is Virginia. So you never know, okay? But some of the better homeschool states are states like Oklahoma, Texas, Indiana. These are states where you don't even file a notice of intent. And they're very friendly homeschool states. But you never know. So if you're living in California right now, I think that's a good state to homeschool.
Everybody's shocked.
I know it.
Yeah,
it is surprising.
I know the legislature has mentioned that they want to come after homeschoolers, but what I want to say, and just kind of from what I envision as I guess a political junkie with this political theater, one, as Assemblyman Gallagher said, they're not back in session until mid-April, and then they may even extend it. I mean, if the governor's going to extend it so that school children do not go back to school at all the rest of this year, I don't necessarily see how the state house can necessarily congregate. So that could probably stifle, so then all the bills that were introduced recently would, which I haven't seen any vaccination bills. I've seen a lot of labor bills and trying to fix AB 5, which is another can of worms. But I don't think that we're going to see any movement on bills until maybe even the next legislative season, which starts usually in January. And that would be after the election. And right now we have a supermajority, and I honestly don't know if we're going to have a supermajority after November, because I think AB 5 really ticked a lot of people off, and so did SB 276. So I don't think that it's going to flip-flop, like Mike was saying with the Virginia State House in one election. But I do see maybe California becoming a little bit more dark purple. And that can lend a little bit more balance, especially with some of these overreaching bills. And actually, I was going through some of my notes from a couple years ago, and I do remember that Assemblywoman Eggman had introduced a bill that was pretty much shot down before it was even heard, that was going to require that homeschool parents have a teaching credential, and that was shot down. I don't know, Mike, if you had anything to do with any movement on that bill and helping to strike that bill before it was even heard in committee. But they'll try. It's up to us to be vigilant.
Yeah, we did. And so, I mean, she's still in the legislature and she might want to do something, but the reason she struck that bill in a hurry is because she got about 500 telephone calls in one day.
Yep.
So the homeschool community in California is well organized, and we had when the bill that ended up getting to the committee, education committee, this is 3 years ago after the Turpin case, which was
Yes.
a horrible situation that homeschooling got blamed for what it shouldn't have been because parents abused their children. And they happened to have filed a private school affidavit. But 3 years ago, 3,000 people showed up for the hearing, and 1,300 people stood in line for 3 hours to testify. And when it came up time to make the motion for the bill and then a second, nobody would second it, including the Democrats. So we've got a track record. That doesn't mean it's perfect, but let's put it this way. I think in California we have one of the better homeschool laws right now, and I think we're going to fight to keep it that way.
Thank you so much. And then, Mike, how can we support Homeschool Legal Defense?
Well, we're a membership association. We're organized to advance and protect the fundamental right of parents to teach their kids at home and to make homeschooling possible for anybody that wants to. And so we're membership. The membership's like $130 a year. You can do it on a monthly basis if you want to do that. And if they want to join and be part of advancing and protecting homeschooling, they can go to hslda.org. You can join online.
I'm putting the URL here in the comments. HS.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, and thank you for doing what you're doing for those folks. And if you're thinking about homeschooling, try it. Just try it.
Yeah.
And this is a perfect opportunity. I mean, we're home anyway.
This is the time. This is the time to do it.
Absolutely. And again, perfect is the enemy of good. Thank you.
Exactly.
It is such an honor to. Oh, a question from Krista. Do you support people in charters?
We do not. We're for private homeschooling. People in charters really don't need our help. They've already given up their freedom. You see, they're under the authority of the public schools.
But I know
So-
that you support homeschoolers.
Oh yeah.
Altogether.
To add on that, like the homeschool charters are funded by the state still, so that's why you're no longer a homeschooler. You're actually under the public school with their little wing of the charter system, and then the evolution.
Independent study.
Independent study, right? Independent study, and then it evolves little by little. As mom and dad, as you guys become more courageous, you'll actually cut your ties with the state. Say, go take a hike. This is my child. I'm going to demonstrate love and all these relationships and everything we're talking about here. You guys see you later. But it is this kind of unschooling of ourselves, deschooling of ourselves, walking across the bridge. And then that's when you can reach out to Mike and the great organization and stuff that we're all doing here.
Well,
Absolutely.
let's put it this way. We believe in the freedom to be able to make the right choices for parents. And charter schools in California are not that onerous right now. But you know what the government always wants? More.
They do.
They always want more regulation, and eventually it'll get to the point where they'll start squeezing people out because they just won't be able to do it.
It's happening already. I see
Yep.
it happening already.
There's a bill right now, actually, it won't move because they're on recess, but there is a bill in the California legislature right now. It's, I think, the first grab at homeschool charters where they want the state to approve all of the vendors, and they want to keep a registry of all of the vendors.
Yeah, that's right. So they're going to start, the legislature is going to start tightening up on this. There's no doubt.
Especially because homeschooling and ISPs, whether it's with charter or PSA, is growing double the national average. And so a lot of, families are leaving public, I guess, neighborhood schools in droves. And that,
right.
I know that one of the schools in my district, in my city, is on a chopping block because they've experienced such declining enrollment. And part of that is because of homeschooling.
Right.
So, yes. But
anything
Mike,
else for me?
It's such an honor to be able to talk to you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
And,
it's an honor to be with you.
Thank you. And yes, so definitely go to Homeschool Legal. What is it?
HSLDA.org.
And sign up. So I'm going to be making the transition from charter to PSA. So we are definitely
good for you. I'm proud
going
of
to
you.
sign up.
Thanks again, Mike, so much.
All right. Bye now.
Take care.
So does anybody have any other questions?
I want to just jump in and toss a few things in if I could. There's two things I want to share with you. There's a website called Homeschoolers Buyers Co-op, and they act as the school, and then you can get subscriptions to all kinds of things at a greatly reduced cost, and that's been a really great resource for our family. My middle child, who's 12 now, taught himself to read when he was 5. I didn't have to do a darn thing. It was awesome because I had a new baby. But that's a really great resource. And the other thing I wanted to toss in is we were talking about as parents getting frustrated, and I get that. I have a sophomore and a 6th grader, and you saw the 1st grader. And one of the most important things we can do to maintain that relationship that David was talking about is apologize. Say to them, you know what? It wasn't okay for me to act like that, or it wasn't okay for whatever it was that you did wrong. We expect them to apologize to us when they do something wrong. And when you model that for them, it's super helpful. This is the 1st grader.
Hi.
And I think one of the greatest tools we can teach our kids is forgiveness. And so when we give that ownership and we model that for the huge thing, and those are the two things I wanted to throw in.
Thank you, Jody. Are there any other questions before? I know everybody's got to get going. We've got dinners and bedtime. Hi, Leora.
Game night.
Yeah. So if anybody has any questions, let's get them out there. I know David's got to get going here in 4 minutes. But I'm so thankful, you guys. Thank you to everybody who helped put this together and for the presentations and the great words everyone had to say. My hope is that in the coming weeks, we can do this more often and really plant some seeds for homeschooling, because I think we have a great opportunity to help people make the transition and really see how easy it is.
Absolutely. I think this is a real good opportunity. You know, I think we're kind of moving through the fear phase maybe, but getting into action and solutions. What can we do if we're going to be at our house? I mentioned there's a support group called Homeschool Leader Facebook group. There's support there, over 2,000 people to support you with other questions. And this is a de-schooling of our own mind. So you guys can do it. It's been proven before, and you have all these great resources online that we've all shared. So I look forward to seeing you guys again whenever we do this again, and having different questions and maybe more people or different topics. But the world is the classroom, and if we can have that type of framework, we can kind of rest, take a deep breath, realize we can do this, and it's been done before.
Yeah. One of the things I'd like to do, if everybody could take a look on my Facebook page, I'll put it up there here in just a couple minutes, just a place to put resources. I know Jody mentioned some. I've also got a friend, Alan. He's not here tonight. He's driving to New Mexico, but he's developed an app that, and it's free right now, to help parents track, you know, schooling and attendance and grades and create transcripts and all of that stuff. So let's, oh, can we create a group? Yeah, I'll create a group on Facebook. Oh, actually, you know what, David, can we use Homeschool Leaders, or do you want to do it separately?
Yeah, no, go ahead. I'm a freedom guy, so I speak freedom. So just so you know, I believe in self-ownership, non-aggression, and self-defense. So yeah, we can do it.
That's why
it's a great community. Yeah.
That's why I love you. So I'll figure it out. But for now, I'll just put a post on my page. And if everybody could throw down any resources so that people can see all the stuff we've talked about tonight, the books and the talks and all of that stuff, that would be awesome.
And I just want to add one more thing. I do know that I recognize a lot of homeschoolers that are already homeschooling. I recognize some names of people that are going to be homeschooling full time. And I also kind of hold space for those of you who find yourself thrust into this and it wasn't your choice. And that's okay too, you know, but we're here for you. I know it's a lot of information to take in, but Stefanie is wonderful. She put all this together. She's adding so many resources, and we are here for you. We're here to support you. And this really is a village. This is a brand new village. So you don't have to go at it alone. And yes, it's a virtual village, but hey, I mean, we're keeping our social distancing. So good job. But yeah, I just need to acknowledge the people that, you know, maybe this wasn't their choice. So, I definitely, I totally get it.
Yeah.
Very, very good point. And also, Stefanie, thank you for putting this together, being a leader, being a champion there, and helping inspire other parents around the nation with activism, people getting up and doing something. And we don't got to get it right. We just got to get it going. So thank you for you and all your leadership.
Thank you. All right, you guys, on that, I think we can go do game nights and dinner and baths and all that good stuff.